it is always good to hear positive endorsement, and I think it does resonate with what I've seen in Isle of Man Meats in the 18 months or so that I've been the chairman, and we have a good, well equipped facility there. We have an excellent management team and a very good workforce, and the animals are treated in a very proper, compassionate, humane manner. I mean, clearly, there's no doubt what the purpose of the meat plant is, and anybody who eats meat has to accept that this is a necessary part of the cycle. But there's a very clear ethical position, and the animals are treated as living, sentient beings up until the point of slaughter, and after that, they're treated effectively as a piece of the food supply chain, and of course there are very clear parameters around that in terms of food hygiene, etc., etc. There's a very strong inspection regime, both from the veterinary side of the animals before they're slaughtered, and then the food and the meat inspectors making sure that the processes are done properly. So it is a well-run operation which does fulfil its purpose, and the views that were expressed there were very similar to views that have been expressed by other Timor members in particular who've been around the plant, and I think it's an experience that is generally positive, and I've heard people say it was a very much better experience than they were expecting. They weren't quite sure what they were expecting, but they weren't expecting it to be as good as it actually is.
Is there much criticism? Whether or not you think it's valid criticism, I might add, does it find negative views from people ever, do you think?
Well, I mean, there are clearly pockets of the community who perhaps don't like the thought of eating meat, or struggle with the connection between the animals you see out in the field and the piece of meat on the plate. And I'm not going to knock those sort of views, but in terms of informed views of the process, I think those are generally pretty positive, and certainly the ethos of Isle of Man Meats is very much about humanity and traceability.
We've heard some not really negative press, but perhaps some mixed opinion about Isle of Man Meats in terms of how it's serving the Manx community, not necessarily in your tenure, but do you think that it's sort of turning a corner now?
Yes, in short, we had a very clear plan when we restructured the operation and effectively took it into government control. There was a recognition that it was a strategic asset for the island, and that without it, the prospects for the Manx agricultural sector are very, very poor. There was also an acknowledgement that it hadn't been run in the optimal way, and that it had struggled, and we put in place a very clear action plan to try and restore its health, and it's a work in progress. But I've got to say, 18 months in, we're really happy with the progress that we're making. It's a well-run operation. We've got a clear strategy of trying to grow our routes to market, both in the UK and on the Isle of Man, to improve our capacity to take more volume through the plant. And you recently have seen an announcement about a partnership with Trade Distribution, which gives us that expanded logistics capacity to serve the UK market better.
So tell us more about what that partnership involves, if you could.
Okay, so it's a 3-year arrangement between ourselves and Trade Distribution Limited, which is part of the Heron and Braley Group, logistics specialist, for them to basically fulfil all our deliveries off island. So they're investing in liveried trucks, obviously refrigerated trucks, which residents will see on the boats and on going across, and then on the motorways of the UK, branded in the Isle of Man Meats logo. So really taking that message out that Isle of Man Meats are out there. And importantly, Trade Distribution also investing in additional trailers, so we get a 50% uplift in the amount of deliveries we can make into the UK, which of course then allows us to process more animals through the plant, and also take more of the sales opportunities that our strategic partner Northgate Foods are unearthing for us across the UK.
You seem to have quite an air of optimism about Isle of Man meats. Some might say you would, being the chair, but do you think that's shared, that positivity, by farmers, by the island's agricultural community?
I think there's always mixed views, and there are always people who have frustrations. So whatever you do, people always want to take it to the next level, and that's right. I share that desire for continuous improvement, and so there will be some frustration out there in terms of the volumes of animals we've been able to take this year, which are up on last year, but they're not up as much as we would have ideally liked. I mean, in an ideal world, we'd have had this partnership with Trade Distribution on slightly earlier, but to some extent we're victims of our own success, because we're now, one of the key planks of our recovery strategy was to make the pricing back to the farmer attractive, so that farmers wanted to supply us.
Because for a long time it was more economically viable to send Manx animals across, wasn't it?
It was, and that was because...
Is that still the case?
No. That what had happened was that the FMA, who used to run the plant, had been trying to balance the books from their point of view, and were effectively just paying a poorer price to the farmers, which meant that they were then commercially better shipping across, which is not an outcome that certainly we want. So the first building block was to get the pricing back to the farmer right, but of course the pricing is attractive, so the farmers want to supply the plant. Then the constraint becomes, how many can you sell at a sensible price, and how many can you process? So it effectively changes the challenge. So we've opened up the supply routes into the UK with Northgate. We've now opened up the logistics capability with Trade Distribution. We're looking to grow our sales on Ireland, and we're also looking to add more value to the products as well. And those are the key planks of our strategy, because we want to make the meat plant more successful than it currently is. And we've got a number of stakeholders in that. Clearly, we've got the farming community, we've got the local food and hospitality and the visitor economy, who want a distinctive Manx offering. We've got the Treasury and DEFRA in terms of the fit with both finance within government and the wider agricultural policy. And then, of course, we've got the public in terms of they would prefer to see animals kept on island and going through the plant rather than being live shipped. So I am optimistic. It's a work in progress. Turnarounds always take time, but if you keep going in the right direction and you take people with you, then you get there. And I'm as impatient as anybody else. But I think from where we started, we're doing well, but we've got much more to do.
Let's talk about the public and the Manx consumer base, because thinking about food miles, one plan which seemed to be hatching was to try and stock Manx meats in a large supermarket, probably the island's largest supermarket. How have those plans progressed?
Okay, so again, they're still work in progress, and we have clearly on. If we're selling on island, we've got a brand identity which people recognise in terms of Isle of Man meats. We've got the benefits of the shorter food miles, etc., etc. So for us, we want to be supplying more meat to the Isle of Man. We've done some really good work with our existing customers in terms of the butchers, the wholesalers, and existing retailers on the island, and that needs to continue. But equally, there is a big supermarket, and we've been working hard to open up the channels into there. It's very much helped by our recent BRC A grade that we've achieved, and we've got a very active dialogue with the management, and I'm confident that we're going to deliver on that as well.